One live. Hey everyone, it's Shawn. Welcome to another edition of Journey to CEO. We're talking about leading politically divided teams. So this is probably one of the most relevant management topics today. It is a growing challenge. Dr. Ann Gatty, my co-host for the Journey to CEO and also my co-author on the Journey to CEO book, is joining me today. I'll pop her up on the screen in a minute, but we got talking. We really wanted to double down and talk about some leadership tips and ideas if you have a politically divided team, because you probably do. We are watching all the division in America. Dr. Ann and I were just talking about that before we got on screen here. Odds are, if you've got a team of any size, you probably have political disagreements with your team. So we're going to give you some practical tips, some ideas, some things you can work with if you have a politically divided team, whether that's at the office or even if you're advancing a social cause. There's chances that if you're an advocate, you may be agreeing on one topic and disagreeing on another. So you really need to think about how to nuance that. And thanks for joining me today.
Hey, it's great to be here, Shawn. And this is a topic that seems to be growing in importance right now because it's becoming a problem of intolerance, really. You know,
Right.
that people think they've got their point of view and they won't even listen to the other point of view. So you really have to be careful in the workplace that you sort of leave your political views outside. You don't bring them in and allow that type of bias to affect how you're working with others. You know, and everybody's got their unconscious bias. And we know that. And, you know, the first thing to do is to look at yourself and say, hey, you know, where are my beliefs coming from? How am I getting my information? And the best thing to do is really to start to not only respect one another, but start to see if you can understand the other point of view and why people think what they do, but leave the discussion out is really important.
Leadership is tough to begin with, you know, and now with politics pervading into everything. I mean, it's going into people's Facebook accounts, it's going into their Google accounts, it's everywhere you can talk about, you know, and then, you know, we have situations where people are showing up wearing a t-shirt, right? So, you know, depending on your dress code at your work, I mean, what if somebody comes in there and they're wearing a t-shirt that has a slogan on it that advances a politically divisive cause? Or, you know, what if, you know, let's say you even have a business casual policy and somebody comes in with a nice polo shirt and it has a label on the side that advances a political cause. I mean, these become real issues in the workplace. And for leaders, it's hard enough to lead a team as it is. And now we're going to have, you know, Mary and John are going to be arguing because they support different presidential candidates. And, you know, they're going to be sitting there going back and forth at the water cooler, and it's going to distract you from the company. So what do you recommend for people in those types of situations?
Well, I think that obviously communication across the board has to be considered, how we communicate with one another. And I would really set some pretty strict rules about communication where it is appropriate or inappropriate to be having these kinds of discussions, and make certain that people adhere to that, and really keep that focus on why that business is in business. What is its purpose? What are we trying to accomplish? How can we work and have a positive impact on our community? And actually, if we have a politically divided team, which we most likely do, showing and modeling to the community that we can still get work done, that we can still make a positive impact. Maybe we're helping a particular, or the small businesses in our community. Maybe we are helping with children in the community, getting ready for school. Maybe whatever we happen to be doing, we have to do and show that we can get along. Because if we can get along, how is the country going to get along?
Right. And that, it hits on some of the fundamental things that you and I talk about in the Journey to CEO book, and that, you know, we've kind of, you know, have been espousing here on this YouTube channel. This is a Journey to CEO YouTube channel, folks. For those that are just tuning in, feel free to subscribe. But one of the fundamental things we always hit upon is having that bigger mission, having that goal, right? So whether you're a family, whether you're a political organization organized around one issue, whether you're a company, whether you're a small business, whatever you are, this is good leadership to be united around the common mission. And what I'm hearing you say is, this is about having that fundamental brand, about knowing who you are, knowing what your business mission is and
Correct.
what your cause is, and getting around the cause and then letting that unite you rather than having other things divide you.
Correct. Those become distractions, and you want to keep your focus on the mission and the vision of that company. That becomes essential, and so that you can carry that trajectory forward. But, there's going to be times, COVID is a prime example, where you've had to modify and you've had to make some changes in how you operate, but you're still trying to accomplish the same thing, whatever that company is, whether you are working in, your furniture sales company, or you're manufacturing some type of widget. You're still trying to get that done.
Yeah.
You're still trying, if you're in public relations or you're a printing company, you're still trying to get that mission accomplished.
We should hopefully be, so busy or so focused as an organization on what our goal is and evolving with the marketplace. And certainly this year is a prime example, with COVID going on, with the closures, with all the market disruptions. We've got real business issues to focus on. So if we're doing it right, our team should be focused on that business goals and what's open, what's closed, what changed with COVID, what new regulations do we have. There's a lot of things around your core mission. And, I would imagine for almost every company out there, that's going to keep you busy pretty much every hour of the workday, is what are we doing and where are we headed?
Well, and I think that a couple of key steps. First step is to know yourself. And as the leader, you need to make certain you're not bringing bias into the workplace. You make sure that you are not the one who is starting the debates and saying, well, this is my political belief, or, this is how I feel about the COVID vaccine. You need to stop that yourself. You need to be the neutral one. And if you're not capable, then that's going to begin to devolve in your workplace, and you're going to have these kind of conversations that become divisive. And so you need to make certain that you are not contributing to that.
Yeah, we're seeing more and more workplaces where the politics is becoming part of the workplace, right? I mean, organizations are arranging themselves around political points of view, and that's a very tricky place to put your business in, is if you take a political stand as a entire business as part of your company brand, then that really causes some internal problems.
I think it's a very dangerous situation for a company, because then you have people within that company, your employees, who may not agree with this. And suddenly you've made a political stand. So this has got to be an inclusive decision. You really do need to remain inclusive and have conversations, but you've got to be very careful with the bias and be respectful, but not allow the divided perspectives to impact how that business moves forward.
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard a lot of employees tell me, I've heard it from a couple different angles, but the version is basically my bosses or my supervisors, the head of my company, are embracing a political position. I'm not necessarily in alignment with what they're doing. Now I feel like I have to go to work, shut up, I can't participate, I can't communicate. And I mean, what does that do for your workplace morale?
Right. I do think you have to. So the first thing is that the leader has to know who they are and be able to be neutral and respectful of one another. And if people come in and they have had a situation that outside of work that is coloring their perspective because, of how they've been treated, as a person of color or the LGBTQ community, if that is brought in, then as a leader, I would address that with them. But I would still say you have to be very careful that everybody respects each each person's humanity, but at the same time, you've got to keep the mission of that organization moving forward. And it is a tricky situation. I wouldn't ignore it. If people come in and they've had situations outside the not the classroom, but outside the workplace, that they need to talk that through. But at the same time, and that's part of being inclusive, is that you respect one another. But as best you can, you've got to stay focused on the mission.
Right. And it does raise a very hard issue for leaders because, we started the show by saying, stay focused on your mission, stay focused on what you are. But some of these issues are becoming so fundamental that we can't avoid them, right? We're going to have interactions. Somebody's going to look at a painting on the wall and they're going to say, hey, did you know that artist did this when they were, a 25-year-old? And, I don't think we should have that piece of art on the wall. Or, I think everybody should have a mask on at work, or I think everybody should get a microchip. These are the types of issues where people are, they do have a workplace connection, with respect to safety, with respect to uniform behavior. And more of these political issues are getting interjected into the company level. And in some ways, we can't run away from them. We just get forced to have to deal with them.
No, you can't avoid it. Contention is out there. This is an extremely divisive period in our history, and we can't avoid it. But and we can certainly talk through. We can do some maybe outside of our workplace, maybe have some groups that can work together. But when they're in the workplace, they need to be focused. And as a leader, I would make certain that I'm listening to everyone, their points of view. I would acknowledge the points of view and then say, but we still have to work as a team here because, and as a group, make certain that we have the goals of the company moving forward agreed upon.
Yeah. And this may be a time for advanced planning, right? Dr. Ann is, we talk about policies and procedures and systems in our Entrepreneur to CEO book. And that's one thing we really like. And so now may be a time to pause and say, okay, time out. What is our policy and procedure if somebody comes in and they have an objection to a piece of art, they have an objection to an article of clothing somebody's wearing, they have an objection to the way we phrase something in our company mission statement or whatever. I mean, these kinds of objections are happening more and more often. They're pro-mask at work, they're anti-mask at work, whatever the case may be. We need ways to deal with these issues. So I think it may be time to stop and build some policies and procedures and some robustness around these issues before they happen.
Well, I agree with that. And I also think that these crucial conversations have to occur so that one person, just because one person happens to be very loud and making a point, that one person can't decide for everyone, that we have to have some, and that's a good idea, Shawn, to have the policy decided that here's a policy. If something comes up that we feel we need to change, whether it's a display of a piece of artwork, or it's what people are wearing, or it's conversations that people are having that are using language we don't agree with, that we have a way, we've got a system in place to deal with it. They can go to this group and they can through HR talk through this, and we'll sit down and we'll convene a group to address these issues and make a decision that has some sense of democracy to it, rather than one person just saying, I disagree with this. So, okay, we need to appease you. There has to be policies.
And we've seen a lot of that, and I think there's truth to that. Noisy, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, as they say. And, while we are all trying to be busy and focused on the mission, there have been instances where we've heard of, just a noisier person gets the attention, and then the company goes that direction. And that can be dangerous for your long-term health of your company, because you end up making a lot of accidental decisions just because somebody was noisy at a moment in time.
You're reacting you're being reactive rather than proactive. So, the leader has to be aware of what she or he brings to the table, as I said, in their biases, their perspectives, and why, and explain that to people so that you're transparent in your communication. And then I agree with you that because the workplace is becoming and can have more of a volatile environment, that you do set up policies earlier. It's better to set the policies before something happens than after they happen.
Yeah, and you just have, it's like so many other things you have to calculate. But I would say for most organizations, the calculated risk is you're probably going to have some of these difficult conversations at some point. So you need some type of internal reporting procedure. This is the person you talk to. This is the analysis is done. This is how we have a meeting about it. This is how we make a decision. Really need to have that in place before it happens, because if somebody shows up and they suddenly want to rip a piece of artwork off the wall, you may have been in reactionary land, and you're not thinking about process, systems, and what this means for the long term. Because the first time a piece of artwork gets ripped off the thing, then they don't like the shirt somebody's wearing, and you can end up with 4 or 5 accidental decisions before you even realize what direction your company's going.
So you have to know what your vision is, clarify what the vision is at this time, where the company is going, the trajectory. The leader has to be able to explain that. And then I would say that as far as policies and procedures are concerned, this is HR, and this really does need to go into the employee manual, the employee policy manual, I do believe, and establish these are the procedures we're going to use, because in an inclusive environment, which is really what we feel is the healthiest environment by far, and we're going to be more inclusive as we move forward. With that in place, we know that there's going to be different perspectives. So let's set that up in our employee handbook so that we can be inclusive, and then we can just execute and people all know where we're going.
Right. And that's good fundamental management, as we talk about in our book, is just letting people know where things are, right? I mean, what your mission is as a company, what your mission is as an organization. What you would tolerate and what you don't tolerate, what's in your zone of excellence and what's not in your zone of excellence. But then the point you're making is let everybody know the rules, because a lot of people get frustrated when they feel like they don't know the rules.
Right.
And so you got to know how they make a complaint. They got to know how that's processed so that they feel like at least it's being treated.
Heard.
Yes.
They were heard. And that's always important too. And so they know the rules, and this is what the process I'll follow. And actually this begins before you even hire them. This is a part of onboarding and the hiring procedures that you have in place, so that you have people that know when they come into this company, this is how we're going to handle things. And in that way, as you have more and more volatility outside the workplace, and you have political disagreements, and you have religious disagreements, and you have a variety, it just seems like everything's a disagreement right now.
Yeah.
You have a mechanism in place that can handle this as it's coming in.
Right. And that's key for being a leader. You're going to have to get involved in a lot of these discussions. You're going to have to get involved in making hard decisions. You're going to probably have to review facts and circumstances about what, like we've used a couple examples, what people are wearing, what artwork's on the wall, what people are saying, phrasing of terminology. You're going to have to make hard decisions as a leader, but it's going to let you be a more effective leader if you have systems and processes in place, right? The report goes to somebody works up the facts, and then you review it at the end and make a decision. That's going to be a much more streamlined process than people banging on your door and saying, hey, the piece of art needs to come down right now because I don't like it.
And if you don't want people wearing T-shirts with slogans or hats or whatever, then that's part of the dress code. And you just get that done beforehand. And then what happens is if you have everything clearly spelled out in the employee manual, then you can just refer to the manual when things are questioned.
Yeah, and I think 2020, I mean, we should probably be reviewing our employee manuals regularly, but 2020 is a particular year to go back and revisit a lot of these types of topics, right? Dr.
And regulations, it's really compliance and regulations change on just a monthly, weekly basis. So
Yeah.
we recommend even just to have someone that you can have, look at the manual, whether it's an HR consultant, whether it's your lawyer, but at least every year to two, you've got some major changes that are going to be implemented in there.
Well, and this one with all the local mandates, the regional mandates, county, city, mask, no mask, ADA, no ADA. You really gotta look at it, like you say, regularly, and you gotta look at it region by region.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why having an HR expert on staff or as a consultant becomes very important, because a lot of the challenges can be dissipated if you look at it before it happens.
Right. And then and you're going to need somebody monitoring regulatory compliance, because, you may get new regulations on a weekly, monthly basis. But I think you got to take a step beyond is what's critical here, right? Is you can't just say, oh, well, there's a new regulation, let's just do what the regulation says. How does that interconnect with everything else, right? So now there's a new mask mandate in one of your office locations. So people have to wear a mask to, comply with the local ordinance.
Right.
And then what if they come in wearing a mask with a slogan on it? Because a lot of people are doing that, right? And then, people are upset because maybe you had something saying you couldn't wear a T-shirt or an article of clothes, and this is where the lawyer side comes in, right? I mean, your manual says you can't wear an article of clothing with a slogan, and they say, well, I'm wearing a medical device with a slogan, and so you have to be very careful, because these things are shifting so darn fast.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. So
anyway, so the leader has to be looking ahead, thinking, how can I plan for making certain that people get along with each other. But I do think that they have to be heard. They have to, if there is a problem, there needs to be a way that they can voice their concerns. And that's all part of, like you said, the procedures, policies, and procedures.
Yeah.
So
and
this would be a good time. And actually, I would suggest that you may convene a group of people to work on this with your HR consultant or your HR department, so that, again, there is representation.
Yeah. And I was going to say that, you've got to get the right team internally. And then I also wanted to kind of raise the idea that you may need external resources, right? So you're the leader. You've got to make these decisions. You've got to coordinate the lawyers. You've got to coordinate the HR. You've got to communicate with your team. Stress. You may want to get an outside place where you can vent, where you can talk to other leaders, Dr. Ann, right?
Right. I agree. And see what best practices or current practices others are finding are working for them, so that they can navigate through this.
Right. What are similar businesses in different industries doing? What policies and procedures they implementing? What problems and pushback have they had from their employees? These are important things to know. And then, you want to talk about that. Maybe you want to talk to somebody in a similar company in a different city, right? You're not a competitor necessarily because you're in different markets, but you could say, hey, how's your restaurant dealing with mask mandates? And so a lot can be learned from other business owners.
And I would also suggest that talking about policies and procedures, go back to your job descriptions that you have. And now, because we've all learned through COVID that a lot of people are working remotely. And so what I recommend companies begin to do is to put in the job description, in your work conditions, what is allowed to be done remotely, what is allowed to or must be done in person, so that when people say, well, it's not fair, she gets to work at home all the time, and you're making me come in, that you think about this for each job and all the tasks, and make certain that you are clear when they need to be in the office, what activities and tasks need to be done in person. And then, if I'm a media specialist, and I'm involved in producing videos. When do I have to be at the site actually filming? And then can I be remote when I'm doing the editing?
Yes.
So, I mean, those kinds of decisions should be made before there's a problem, not after there's a problem, with people thinking that they're being treated unfairly.
Yeah, and I think it raises one of those fundamental things that underlies so much of this, which is kind of these upfront understandings or knowing what's expected. And, a lot changed with COVID-19 because people started to work from home a lot more than anticipated. We had to shift very quickly. But, to the extent we are bringing in new hires, I mean, to have this written out, to have it scoped out, and to show it to them before they start working with you could be tremendous in making sure there's not a problem down the road. Like, you're going to be expected to work from home for these activities. You're going to work from the office for these activities. And that's what's expected of you. And if you just lay that out, then you're not going to have as many conflicts or problems.
Well, and in the workplace, one of the major concerns from the employee's standpoint is, how am I being treated? Am I being treated fairly?
Yeah.
Is there equality in the workplace? And that, I think, is something that a leader needs to be thinking about very carefully right now, that whatever policies are put in place, however you communicate, that you are showing and modeling that there is fairness across the board.
Fairness is a very important thing. There's an interesting video with lab animals and fairness, and I'll have to share that with you at some point, Dr. Ann. But even animals want to be treated fairly. If they see the other animals getting different treatment than them, they're going to get upset. And then we're humans, we're much more evolved. But if we say, hey, I got to work harder than that person, or that person gets things I don't get, it really, really lights something internally. And like I say, even animals react to that. So humans definitely would have that same visceral reaction. It's emotional. It's in that core emotional part of your brain. If it feels like you're not being treated right, you get upset, and then that makes you reactionary.
Correct. So I think from a leader's standpoint, they need to search their own soul and know exactly why they believe what they believe. But they also, then it gives them a better understanding moving forward. But they have to be neutral with their, in my opinion, they have to be neutral with their employees, making certain that they are focused on the mission and the vision, and they're able to explain that, continue to explain that over and over again to the employees, having the rules set with the policies and procedures, so that in an inclusive environment, and we're still striving for that inclusive environment, that they are able to have the mechanisms in place so that different points of view do not become distractions away from the execution of the mission.
Yep, I love it. Folks, you're watching the Journey to CEO show. We're live on the Journey to CEO YouTube channel. We also have lots of recorded videos from the past. So I recommend, if you're interested in these type of topics, you go over to the YouTube channel, Journey to CEO, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and dig through the past videos. And we'll love to read your comments. Dr. Ann, I'm going to let you say a thing or two here in a second. But before I do that, I want to remind folks, if you're interested in this, we talked about getting some support. Dr. Ann and I have been working on building small groups of business owners, getting them together, getting communications going. So if that's something you're interested in, we've got some stuff in the beta process, can help you get through this very tricky time. So reach out to us. We can help you. We can help you with some coaching, or we can get you into a coaching team, which will get you around these kind of issues and kind of help advance your company, make sure you're looking for some of these blind spots. So, Dr. Ann, I just want to pass over to you for any final thoughts you have.
Yeah, I just really would encourage people to join our Facebook group and start some meaningful dialogue about these kinds of issues. And we really do like to think of ourselves as problem solvers. So we're constantly looking at the horizon, seeing what's going on and how this is going to impact business leaders moving into this, continuing in the 21st century in the world of unknown as it is right now. So please join us, and we enjoy your questions. We enjoy conversations, and we look forward to hearing from you.
All right, folks, looking forward to reading your comments. Journey to CEO YouTube channel. Drop the comments directly on the video. Journey to CEO Facebook group. Come hang out over there. We're looking forward to talking with you folks. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you for another video soon.